So welcome everyone to this 7 Insider event. We're here talking about the Ukrainian Warchive project. We've previously talked to Emine about the project when it was being conceived, so we're going to get an update about that. But we're particularly pleased to be joined by Julia and Sergei, who are 2 of the photographers in the project's first book called 13 Stories of War that Emine is going to talk about. To begin with, as always, we would like to thank our partners Photo Wings for making the event possible and supporting 7 Insider and bringing us together for this conversation. Emine, you're going to begin. Let's start with you. Give us a little bit of a reminder, a bit of background about the Ukrainian Warchive project, what it is and what it aims to do.
Thank you, David, for the question, and thank you for everyone who attending, and Yulia and Sergei who agreed to join us today. And my name is Emine Ziyatdinova, and I'm a co-founder of Ukrainian Warchive and editor of the book which I'm going to talk about. It's right here. It's called 13 Stories of War. So we started this initiative in 2022 in the summer. With 4 people who all of us are working in photography and media. It's myself, who is photographer and editor, Misha Pidan, who is a Ukrainian photographer from Kharkov, who had been residing in Sweden since 90s, Evgeny Safonov, he's editor-in-chief of a media called Life in War at this moment as well, and used to be editor-in-chief of Bird in Flight online magazine about visual culture in Ukraine. No, visual culture, it was based in Ukraine, the project. And Katerina Sergii, she is a founder of the Fund for a Journalist, and she is also was a founder of the Barona Media. And so how we got to that idea, when the full-scale invasion started in 2022, all of us were thinking, what could we do? What should we do for our communities, for people in Ukraine? And as a person, I myself, I'm going to talk probably about myself. I was residing in London at that point, and I was not in Ukraine. And it's felt like 2 things for me felt really kind of like there was so much disinformation from Russia's side coming. And I felt like when I was talking about Ukraine previous years as well, I always felt like there was some kind of like a label of bias put on me because I'm Ukrainian talking about Ukraine. And I felt like Ukrainian perspective was missing in some way, and that it's pretty much a lot of people abroad, including like, it's very weird, including like the closest people around you and your family, kind of like dismissed your perspective on what's happening between Ukraine and Russia and the war happening, which I want to remind it happening for 10 years already. And it started in 2014 with annexation of Crimea and spread it to Eastern Ukraine and grew into full-scale invasion in 2022. And that is one thing. Another thing is what could we do for our own communities, which are pretty much photographers. And in the intersection of these 2 things was like Misha Pidan and Katerina and Evgen, we kind of met and we were discussing what could we do and things like that. Other co-founder had a little bit different idea, but for me it was intersection of these things. What could we do for preservation of history, kind of counter information to the disinformation, like, which is pretty much documentary photography plays a huge role in it. Yes. Because this is like quite straightforward camera photography and then Ukrainian perspective. and own communities photographers. So we started with idea of Ukrainian Warchive, pretty much collecting and preserving professional Ukrainian photographers' work and collecting it and trying to create a platform with this photography to present it to the general audience. I can talk a little bit about challenges here. As people coming from media and photography background, we were like, oh, we are going to do it in 3 months. We like kind of like had this like
Huge
urge and like,
ambitions.
yes, and it's like, and you know, like when you're journalist, you make things happen in one day. Like you like to know, you do a TV report in one day. You need a 10-minute news feature, you do it in 2 days, and things like that. And so and we felt like it's possible, but then we started doing it, and archiving itself, it's a different world of it's not media, it's actually like a substance was different. It requires a different kind of like approach as well, and and we're talking about completely different timelines and different dedications. And so
and you're trying to archive as many visual images, as many photographs as possible related to the invasion and what happened
yes,
after
but
the
it's
invasion.
also, we are trying to archive something which is going on right now.
Yes.
So it's not past, but archive, usually when we talk about archives, it's something which happened in the past.
Yes.
And we refer to the past, but actually it's something we discussed today even with my colleague Emine Ahmed, who is responsible for communications, that it's actually the images from 2022, like from Mariupol, for example, or from Borodyanka, they're not being perceived when you see them as the past. They are pretty much our present today.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I still believe that is a good approach to start it when it's going, as you can pretty much collect more. And I hope this archive will be growing. But I think we changed our perspective a little bit. That is really long-term project.
Yes.
And it's going to be moving much in slower pace than we expected.
Yeah.
And so talking about challenges, so what we try to do, we try to contact photographers, collect their work and archive them. And archiving, it means cataloging, putting data in the data sheets. But before you put data in data sheets, you need to develop the collections themselves and fonts, and you need to create a data sheets themselves and categories which you try to describe before you ask someone to provide this information. So that itself took quite a lot of time, and with a platform which we're trying to create, which also, I'm going to share the screen now.
Yeah, share the screen and show us the platform that you are creating, because as you say, this is something that's happening in real time, but you're also trying to preserve these images, and you're trying to create a digital platform where people will be able to access these images, correct?
Yes, and could you see it?
Yes.
So that's kind of what we're trying to create. So this is supposed to be a front. It's not working yet. I'm just saying it's under construction. It's supposed to be a front end of a back end archive.
Right.
And we are working with a distant viewing lab at Richmond University they did a prototype of engine for us. And so pretty much there are 2 professors in distant viewing lab. It's if you reference to the photogrammer, it's a visualization of Library of Congress photography archive of depression and the First World War.
Yep.
So it's also like when you look at this website, or like you look at the idea, it's what a simple idea. Only thing you want is a map with like administrative units, like pretty much oblast and rayons and cities. And you want a timeline, you want photographers in the archive. And then you want pretty much photos correspond to the map, correspond to the timeline.
Right.
And it sounds very simple, and technically it's not so simple. It turned out as we thought. So So, and also for this engine to read out and put all of this information into the platform, you pretty much need quite a lot of information. And pretty much this is a data sheets we developed with actually these two professors at Richmond with Distant Viewing Lab.
Yeah.
And pretty much each photograph, like, and then you also think about archiving, and each, pretty much by archiving standards, each item which archived is supposed to have a certain type of name and certain like directory and in cataloging and in fonts. And then you need like all different kind of information about authors, about the captions, if is the image is a graphic or not, like all the kind of rights you have, if you have a right to put it on the platform, do you have a right to store it, if you have a right to whatever for other use, and then the location and things, and then you have tags, creators, information, series, description, genres, then exe files, and data dictionary tag descriptions. Like we haven't got there yet.
Yeah.
But pretty much for the platform to function, it needs to read, each photograph needs to be cataloged and needs all of this information included in the data sheets before it gets to the platform.
Yeah.
And maybe I can just show.
How many photographs or images have you collected so far?
So far we have around, I'm not sure how many we collected. I know that we described around 5,000.
Right.
So there is around 5,000 images in the data sheets.
Right.
And that is just like, I'm going, you see the map, right, with
Yes.
images. So that is a prototype which we developed with University of Richmond Distant Viewing Lab, which pretty much shows you on the timeline. And the darker it gets, it's like the images we have, and then you can go and you choose, for example, the region, and then you see the photographs which you have, and then you can like look at the photograph and you can read the caption and who done it and things like that.
Yeah.
I probably should have told that some images are graphic before sharing it. And so this is a prototype of the engine, and that's what is under development right now, which is like screenshot of design I showed.
Yeah.
It's not up and running yet, and I'm not even sure when it's going to be up and running. So it's being now with the developers, and you can see it's like not completely functioning yet. So we're trying, why we decided, like, because that engine which we develop as a prototype, it doesn't have, and what we found out, like Photogrammer also, it's only front end website. It doesn't have as much back end and doesn't have admin system. And so what does it mean? That like if you come not from the developer, or you don't have a developer in your team, you need someone to take and run through the code every time you upload the photographs.
Yeah.
So we're trying to, at the moment, to develop admin system and develop it in different, a little bit, to add some functionality and things. And and the idea is, of course, like what we're trying to do is, I do believe not only like preservation of the photography is important, but it's also we try to preserve pretty much a whole image of war and history and what's happening. And of course, like we will have a blank points or like stuff, like, for example, we don't have any certain regions or like certain places, we don't have any photography coming. And of course, photography we follow from news. And so, but I do believe like that with the time we'll collect more, and we will just be filling that platform in, and it will be like a very important resource for the researchers as well, and just generally like about history of this part of history of Ukraine and this time. And so that's what we're trying to do. And one of the main challenges for us right now as well is that archive itself, we started as an initiative. It's 4 people who got together.
Yeah.
And so archive itself as idea, it cannot exist as an initiative. It cannot be just NGO, which runs like through time. It have to be attached either to like institution which runs for a long time and which like has ability to maintain strategic copies and like archives and stuff.
Yeah, and you're obviously
so,
trying to create something that will be secure and will
yes.
After investing all this time and effort, you want it to exist and not just kind of die digitally at some point because someone runs out of funding or whatever.
Yes, and so one of the main things about digital archives, and we are digital archive, is that all this digital archiving, like it needs maintenance. Like by all these rules, every time 3 or 4 years, you need to go back to your files to check that they are right format, they're still opening, and they're still like software is running, which supposed to be like working with the software and things like that.
Yeah.
So we trying to at the moment to this, like this is like our strategic goal, and we're like moving towards institutionalization pretty much. But at the moment we have a partnership with Open Society Blinken Archive in Budapest, which agreed pretty much to provide a storage for strategic copy of the archive. And so we're actually transferring some of our archive these or next funds for them to put them in magnetic tapes, not stripes, tapes actually. So it would have also a physical, like
physical backup.
So it's like a strategic copy saved, like to like on top of the like cloud server and like a physical server, and so that's what we're working on. And it's also like we of course limited resources on top, like on the communication as well and things like that. So it's a lot of work. That's I can tell for sure. And so
before we move on to talk about the book and the way it's related to the archive, we've just got a couple of questions I want to bring in. How do you find the photographers who are contributing to the archive, and are they independent photographers? Are they all Ukrainian photographers? How do you select?
So at the moment, we have been collecting only Ukrainian photographers' work. We plan to open up for foreign photographers and correspondents who work in Ukraine as well, especially as the work is important. As an initiative, as we run, as like reality, we have no ability to pay for, like, for example, for purchase, like getting the work to the archive. We can offer like photographers to pretty much storage space and to make sure that it's like archived and stored and maintained. Ukrainian photographers, as we all coming from like photography background, we all know everyone almost. And I was like, Yulia and Sergii are in the archive, and both of them I know since 2014. I mean, I'm not only one of the, actually we have archivist and who is himself a photographer, Arseniy Gerasimenko, who contacts people and kind of offer them to join archive and ask them for photos to submit. And then we also had a program. We ran 3 rounds, waves of the small production grants. They're quite small, actually. They're not enough to make any project really, but it's more like to support photographers who are working on some kind of personal project. And those works also went into archive. And actually, both Sergii and Yulia received these small grants. And that's how we got them in the archive as well.
So that's quite unique for an archive, because, as you say, you're doing something in real time, but you're also supporting the creation of work with these small micro grants. I think you've issued like 28 micro grants in the last 3 years or so.
It was 28 grants in the last 1.5 years. And it was with funding pretty much we got from Swedish Institute. And I do believe it's important. I mean, I'm myself not in Ukraine. I probably shouldn't be taking like Yulia and Sergei could talk more about the situation in Ukraine, but I think it's really important to support, especially not news coverage, but more like of personal projects. Actually, in the book, 10 out of 13 stories in the book also were supported by these grants,
right?
Small production grants, and actually, and another thing, which is probably if you get a hold of the book, please buy the book. You can see that they are very different in the format. That some of them they're all documentary, but some of them lean toward art than art documentaries and photojournalism. And so we do range from we do open to any kind of pretty much documentation, which we don't try. We try to check ethical issues and just to make sure that it's and we try to be very transparent. So we do put in these data sheets if it's collages or it's were manipulated. We pretty much put it if it's more art project right away, that is information.
Yeah.
And,
so Emine, perhaps you could bring up the PDF copy of the book that you have to share while we're talking about this.
Yeah, I'll talk a lot already, but I'll share a couple just to see some of the images which are in the book and type of project. This is Yulia Kochetova, who is with us project, was personal, amazing work from a lot from frontline, and Yulia just doing enormous work, going and I don't know, Yulia, when are you not on frontline actually? But
only when I'm
but
in
I guess
Berlin.
all Ukraine. Yeah, I guess today you're not on the front line, but I guess it's also actually I want to say on the Yulia spends a lot of time close to the contact line. I don't want to say front line because Ukraine became front line everywhere.
Yeah.
And Kiev and Lviv and except Uzhhorod, I guess Uzhhorod didn't have missile attacks. Yeah. And so this is Yana Kononova's work called Radiations of War, which is a medium format camera, and she photographs this kind of destructions and kind of metaphor to the pain and radiation pretty much, and how this trauma pretty much penetrates invisibly everything. Yevhen Maloletka, who you probably all heard of, seen the photographs, it's his project of Siege of Mariupol, and he and his team who done 20 days in Mariupol just got BAFTA award and Oscar award just 2 days ago. This is on the more art side of project. Liza Bukreeva, Do Not Look at the Pain of Others, which you've done. It's a commentary on the graphic video footage consumption in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine pretty much, because through social media, everything is available. And she has been photographing all different kind of footage she's seen of a lot of execution, a lot of torturing and things like that. Roman Pashkovsky, torture rooms. Roman Pashkovsky, before invasion in 2022, mostly photographed in the studio, portraiture, a lot of musicians and commercial work. And now he turned into this documentary, and this is torture rooms in Kherson, in the pretty much where Russian soldiers were torturing civilians. And Alena Grom, the psychiatric clinic, project from psychiatric clinic in Borodyanka, which was under occupation.
Yeah.
This is Sergei, who's going to talk about his own work.
We'll see this shortly.
Amazing project, and I just admire a way and creative approach Sergei took into the thinking about how war affects everyone's life through such a simple, it's also seems simple, but it's so complex in the same way about you think about gardens. Azovstal, you might have seen the photographs. Dmytro Kazatsky was taken prisoner of war right after pretty much he's a part of Ukrainian troops which besieged in Azovstal. Sasha Kurmas, who actually do collages of the found object images and his own photographs and texts. And this is like more on the art side as well. Alexander Glizdelov, who is very classic photojournalism, black and white film photographs. This is an interesting project. Oля Koval, she's a student, cinematography student actually in Kiev. And you can see the cinematographic like approach and like seeing, but also like kind of commentary about truth and how it's being distorted. Vyacheslav Ratinsky, who is a photojournalist and photographed daily life and how people's life changed since war, like ordinary people. And Roman Bardun, kind of commentary on how our lives turn into people's life in Ukraine turn into museum when everyone observes it. Okay, I'm
so
going
Emine, before we move on to Yulia, could you bring up the title page of the book so that people can see? It's called 13 Stories of War. And where is it available? People are asking, how can people get a copy of the book?
At the moment, I can send in the chat the link. If you're in the UK, you can buy it directly from us. I can mail it. In Ukraine, it's going to be available from 28th of March. We are doing presentation in Kiev. There is a bookstore in Sweden right now, which is available, and they do worldwide shipping. I can send you links on the chat. And it will be available in some point in the US as well. And I'm bringing them to Canada in May. So please sign up, just follow us on Instagram for updates.
Okay. If you can drop any links that you have into the chat, that will be good for people in the audience. And thank you for that. Let's yes.
Could I just add? So all the sales from our side are going into actually this like small grant production grants.
Yes.
So if you buy the book, everything Ukrainian Warchive makes goes directly to the support of production grants.
Excellent.
Just a remark.
Yulia.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Okay, so I'm sharing.
You received a micro grant. Your story is in the book. You're going to share that with us. As you share your screen, tell us a little bit about your background. Emine said that you're never far from the contact line. Tell us a bit about where you work and how you work.
You know, like I wish one day I'm gonna be a boring lady with a boring life, but unfortunately, I'm the part of so-called the generation of revolution and war. I didn't caption myself, and I asked like colleagues and journalists not to caption and title me as a war photographer. It wasn't my choice. I photographed this work as that's my war, and that's war happening in my country, and that's what makes the such a distinguished line. What is local perspective versus foreign perspective? We do have incredible amount of foreign colleagues reporting from Ukraine, but for them it's an assignment, a story, even with a professional approach, even with the insane level of empathy. I'm not talking about everyone, but I do have colleagues from all over the world who are doing incredible job here. But for them, it's just the war happening in this country. And they always have return tickets. And for Ukrainian photojournalists, documentary photographers, any kind of storytellers, it's pretty different and it's so personal. And I often think if it actually makes my work easier or more difficult, the fact that I'm Ukrainian, the fact that I'm inside this hurricane. And I still have no answer. Maybe I still don't have an honest answer. But today I'm going to present my ongoing project with the title War is Personal, which is supported by War Archive and presented in 13 Stories of War book. Plus a tiny announcement. There are going to be a lot of pictures. Some of my editors love me for that. Some of them hate me, but they all still work with me. So maybe I'm doing something well. And there's going to be one video and one poem as well. And also I will share a bit about another project which I'm doing thanks to microgrant too. So here we go. And that's me just to remind that war is not the only part of me, but I also fun. There are like list of the clients I work with. My work was featured by Instagram pages of Adobe Lightroom, Fotografiska, and I'm proudly Ukrainian Warchive contributor. That's me on 25th February 2022 in Kramatorsk. And that was the moment when I actually realized that this war should have a face. That's me again. That's actually my portrait made by Sniper in Bakhmut in the end of April. And I love how in the book, which Emine just presented, one of the main form is diptych. And I love how different these two portraits look like. I just did the portrait of this sniper, and then he said like, okay, let me make a photograph of you. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, it's so cool, you know, like we photographers, pretty ego and selfish people. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have this like true war portrait. But in reality, you see, I'm a tiny bird here. I look so out of the frame. I look so tiny, and he looks like the person of war. That's also something I'm exploring through my work. And here me again photographing Russian soldiers in Crimea. So it's pretty long-term project. And this war is too personal for me, while that's my the picture from my childhood. Me and my brother joined the Ukrainian armed forces on the second day of full-scale invasion. So that's not about assignments at all.
Yeah.
Something what I faced with when I started to contribute vitally to different foreign media mostly, that's actually media simplifies everything and simplifies wars too. And when it's your war, it hurts you so much more. So that's how media presents war in general. Just like, here is the map, here is the line, here's arrows, someone is attacking. It's just like a football game, like who you vote for. But that's how war looks closer. I did realize that our war became the most documented war in the history, including TikToks from trenches and satellite images where you could literally on air witness the fact that the town is disappearing because of Russian shelling. But this huge amount of footage doesn't make that human approach, I guess. Something what I felt was that we're actually losing the human in this hurricane, trying to get this cliche or like trying to get this wider image or drone view, whatever, but we don't actually care about the human in the end, and we're just losing that human. I also think a lot that we as journalists and editors and media industry itself, we actually make people learn the name of the battle. And we all knew like the battle for Severodonetsk or the battle for Bakhmut, but do we know the name of the person smashed by this war? What makes the title of the city more important than the name of the exact person? That's why I was like literally trying to aim my work on getting as close as possible and getting to human first. I'm not doing droning at all. Like, I'm terrible on that. Maybe that's the reason. I'm not actually big fan of like shooting artillery, because I think it's pure hell and it's pure death, and it's nothing magnificent in being witnessing howitzer firing, no matter if you are standing, let's say, on the right side of the history, it's still a pure death firing from the howitzer. But I actually realized that there is something which I could contribute as a storyteller with my previous experience as a journalist, photographer, filmmaker, and also adding writing. And as it said on this slide, finally, I could say it's honestly that, in my opinion, that classic journalism is boring, and all stories about war, all these like general cliche stories, they were told already. Unfortunately, war as a nature, it just like keep repeating itself. Or make something immersive if you just like mix different techniques, if you make your story not just if you make the viewer not just see your story but feel your story, just like hear how it sounds, how it smells, and like the most important, to feel what it's about, that makes things different. And now I'm gonna show you one video. It all consists of film photos made by me on my dad's camera. It's all Zenith, and that's something what gives me, let's say, allow me personally to make this naive photography in the war zone, because everyone just like, what the hell is this? I'm just, oh, that's like, I'm doing film a bit. It's like old camera, don't care about this. But I'm really thankful to like this old film camera that you could get this blurry and unpredictable results, because that's what actually war is about.
Tell me about this year, about how far and silently the cannons fired, how afterward the trenches began to bloom. Tell me about the fragment in your helmet. Tell me, as if it all happened not with me. Tell me about the bus with the wounded. Tell me, tell me, tell me. Tell me about Norway and about the rain, about Munch and his long-haired women, about love that turned into ashes. Munch knew for sure that we had no chance to escape from love. Tell me about all those who we can't save this year. Tell me about all those who remained in captivity and those in the soil. Tell me if you would have enough voice for all of them. Tell me about the Pyrenees and about Seoul. Tell me about airport that consists of the same loners as I am. I have a yellow-blue flag on my suitcase and I wanna go home. Do you wanna me tell you what the war is like when it's home? Tell me about the August small talks. What is this under your collarbone? Is it a hickey? No, a bruise from Kalashnikov rifle. Tell me about all the bullets in the fields in the east. Are they rising? Are they rising? Are they blooming? Tell me. Hold your peace about this year. Keep silent, I ask you, keep silent. Stop filming. Hold your peace with me.
And actually, these cocktail of different mediums give their additional layers of what war is actually. And I do have people who are following me not just because I'm reporting from Ukraine, but just because it's me, exactly. Me having a brother in the army, me having my family, my parents' home being hit, me being with my friends with whom we used to make movies before the invasion, but now they're like took weapons and joined the army instead. And that's like, that makes this approach so different, because you actually could care and worry about someone, like exactly about some exact person that makes you closer. And I actually realized that people don't care about numbers and about the name of the battle. People don't even care about incredible photograph you took from like the insane reportage photographer from the place of the hit, whatever. But they do care about people. They don't care about the trench, but they do care about the people in this trench. And all my work is actually aimed on giving this war face and giving this war a name, and try to not to forget any of name. I know that like I don't have like hundreds of hands and like dozens of cameras to capture every story. And the thing which I was smashed after Kiev region was liberated was that with all tortured civilians, we don't actually know the story that we could actually tell as their like as the visual storytellers, as documentary photographers. We could actually keep photographing the story of people who are still alive.
Yeah.
Yes, you could do reconstruction, you could make interview with the closest, but what you're gonna do with the story which just disappeared because the person was killed? And that's something how I actually work, and why am I so passionate about is just try to collect and to archive as many personal stories as possible, because I do believe in first-hand storytelling. I do believe that Russian-Ukrainian war should be told from Ukrainian perspective, and that it makes our path not easier, but we definitely know who are these people in the frame and what are they fighting for. And that makes, I guess, the work of Ukrainian photographers, photojournalists, and storytellers, that makes our work stronger. No matter how more painful it is, but it makes our work stronger.
It's very powerful, Julia. Do you pitch this to international media that ask you to do assignments? Do you tell them about this approach? And if so, what is their response to that?
Mostly they love me, you see. So like that's the way how.
That's good.
You know, like I also should always say that we're not begging for like additional support or like giving more assignments, especially for Ukrainians. No, we get in these assignments, and like we had incredible amount of professional Ukrainian photojournalists reporting from the ground, just because we're doing incredible work. And mostly all writers I'm working with and reporters and my photo editors, they're just like really, really respectful, and they rely on me, and they rely on what I think is the right thing, and they ask for advice. And I do really appreciate this approach, because first 2 months of full-scale invasion, I was like the worst lady to sit next to, because I was like, no way, why you're sitting here and saying like, oh, it was same in Iraq. Oh, Julia, poor Julia, like, I'm terribly sorry. Oh, let's photograph this lady, she's crying, like, easy peasy job. And I was like, no, you can't do like this with my people. And then one of my colleagues, he asked like, okay, if we're doing wrong, how should we behave? Like, what should we do? And I always say like, just ask local.
Yeah.
Don't think that you know everything. Just like, if you're really super confident about your work and you're professional, and it's like 12th war before, and here you come in to Ukraine, just don't be so sure that you know everything about the world. Just ask local, and that's like, that makes everything easier. And I really see that difference between reporters who really care. They always ask like, what do you think is the best, like, what do you think is the main story happening right now? What is the topic you think is not shown in international media? Julia, like, could you give us advice? And I'm always like, yes, of course, like, I'm gonna consult with pleasure. And I do really appreciate that, like, you opening your eyes and heart, and don't think that like, oh, we know everything, it's just the same as we saw in Africa. No, it's not the same. And also I have like quick 3 slides, I guess, that's for microgrant support, because it wasn't just only for fuel to drive across the front line and to do the previous work, but also for another project I'm working on. It's about girlfriends and wives of prisoners of war who are still in captivity. And that's like a portrait series plus reportage, and maybe the main result which I want to share with you and with the audience, that Anastasia's husband, Anastasia is on the left, Anastasia's husband, Yura, he was just released from captivity. And now I'm photographing and following their story of coming back from being imprisoned. And part of the work was published in The Guardian, and Anastasia's story as well. And it's always cool to end with kisses. So here is the kiss, and I'm super thankful for your attention and open for questions. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Yulia. We'll bring in some questions at the end, but let's go to Sergei. And Sergei, take us through your project, which Emine introduced briefly, but tell us also tell us a little bit about yourself, because you're not a full-time photographer. You worked in media and AR and VR and so on, but you returned to photography, as it were, after the invasion. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is a story about returning. So, well, it's not something that I really wanted to. I love photography and I love all things visual, but this is not the way I'd like it to be. Right. But I think I'll say a couple of words. Let me host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, you can. Let me just make you co-host again.
Yep.
Now you should be able to do it.
I think I do.
There we go.
I hope you can see me.
Naive Ukrainian Gardens. If you go full screen on that, there we go. Perfect.
Yeah. So I think I'll try to be super fast and do it in an express way. So several disclaimers first. Usually I speak fast, I speak loud, and I have some problems with hearing. So if I'm too fast, or if I'm too loud, or I miss something, just yell at me, because I might miss it. Yeah, stopwatch on. So okay. Yeah, indeed. My name is Sergii Polezhaka, and I've been working as a photographer, as a news photographer, starting 2010, 2011. I covered Maidan and the beginning of the war in 2013, 2014, Maidan, and then on and on with war. And mostly I was working with news outlets. And I think that period of time had already influenced me in a way that I'm quite fed up with quick photography, with news. So for my personal work, I make a step back and I photograph what's important for me in a slow pace, with my own camera, with my own decisions, and they're quite different. So that was a decision, and that was a style choice, I would say, style and approach choice that was made, I think, like 10 years ago. So that's why today I'm not talking about news and about news coverage, which I'm still doing quite a lot. During all these, 10 years, I was moving away from photography in general, and for sure from news photography. And one of the reasons most of the photographs you'll be seeing here are panoramic is the reason that I sold all my digital cameras, and I thought that, well, I've documented a lot, and now I'll try to move somewhere where I can act, I can do something, not only observe the reality. And the only camera that was left with me was my Hasselblad Expand, because it was too personal. And by the beginning of the war, it was the only camera I had. So quickly I found other cameras and I started working with media again. But again, just like in 2015, 2016, when I was doing another project, the only camera for my personal work was my Hasselblad Expand, and I started working with it. And this is the first garden I think I shot next to Kyiv, next to Zhytomyr highway. There was a massacre. There were many civilian cars being shut down and burned with lots of bodies out there. And I was exploring the villages around it, and I saw another angle. So I saw the places where Russian troops were staying and having their battles in the civilian gardens and in the civilians' houses. And so I saw this picture. I saw this scene of a trace of some tank or APC just going across the village through the gardens. And it was early March. So this is the period where all the Ukrainians are going into their gardens and painting the bottom part of the trees with white to protect them from insects. And in general, I know it from my father, who is actually some 10 or 15 kilometers away from this scene. He's doing almost the same. And I know how personal it is to take some care of the garden in the early spring. And of course, there was nobody in there, and the whole scene reminded me of the cherry garden scene from 1917 by Sam Mendes, and of the cherry garden scene from actually a Russian literary piece by Chekhov. But that happened later, and then I thought that, well, what a cruel thing. And it was an additional layer in addition to what was going on just several hundred meters away on the Zhytomyrsky highway itself. That was something different. And later on, I was visiting other places in the liberated areas around Kyiv, and I started noticing that the garden itself is such a special place. It's somewhere between the private thing, like your bedroom, and the public place, like a city square. And this is where the intimate and the public they kind of collide. And this is where you start to see the clash of civilizations, because this is where the Russians came in and they were surprised and they were staying in these gardens. They were leaving their marks. This is where the garden became a battlefront, a battle spot. And it told a lot. So in a way, my project is almost, I would say, even an opposite to comparing to Julia's approach, for example. So because I was deeply inside the news flow, and I was seeing all the death and wounds like as a firsthand experience, for my personal work, I was trying to make a step back and to make sense of all of this. And that's why I was visiting all these places. And I came to this project, which I called the Navy Ukrainian Gardens, where I look at the garden as an umbrella thing, as an umbrella concept to explore the relationships of a person and the land and the space we live in, and the choices we make while dealing with the space, and how these choices influence this war, and how the war influences the places we live, how it influences back. So I look at the garden as a place, as a territory, as a geography. I look at it as something that you could have or not have, as a property, as something very important, as food, as resource. Of course, garden is also about art, emotion, culture. And finally, I summarize it all while thinking about the post-colonial myth of the garden, of the good old days, and the pastoral imagery. So I think I'll just run very quickly through several samples of different angles. Then I'll just talk how I worked with this project. So as I said, first of all, garden is a place, and it was very obvious in the beginning of the war, when it turned out that Ukraine is not just a country, it's the biggest country in Europe, and actually it was possible for millions of people to move out of bigger cities in what they thought could be a nice escape tactic, to move to their summer houses, to their dachas, what we call them, as a safe spot. But it turned out to be a death trap for many of them in Bucha, in Irpin, in Borodyanka. Something that used to be a safe place for centuries, it's not a safe place anymore. And the thing is that it's not a singular event, it's a massive thought. So it doesn't show you exactly what was going on to these people, but I was trying to explore the way of the people thought. So they thought about it, and it shows you the massive scale of this approach in Ukraine. And it's not only about the moving out of the city to stay in your countryside. The countryside itself became a battlefront. And as I said, the choices you were making while organizing the space around you, for example, putting your house next to the river, sometimes makes it the first house to be shelled at. In a similar way, like the cultural landscape, for example, like the infamous bocage and the hedgerows in Normandy really influenced the way how the battles were going on during the summer of 1944. Ukrainian villages, and the people who went there actually to settle down and to start to be the safe spot, to be the battle zones and the battle lines. And these, for example, are so the house on the bottom and the river to the left, to the right, is the place where the attack on Kiev was stopped. And almost 1,000 years ago, this similar battle was going on, like just several tens of kilometers away. Like, so the story keeps repeating itself, but in a little bit different way. So of course, I cannot omit the factor of water in this project. Geography and the space we live in is being weaponized again and again. And of course, you're trying to use water as a barrier to defend yourself. For example, the siege as a concept, as a Cossack concept. And again, it was used centuries ago. And now this factor is being used against us. So Russians blew up the Kakhovka power dam 1 year ago. And what you could see as a pastoral, nice looking countryside, again, turns into a death trap. And what you see above on the right is the landscape that the desert appears when the full water goes down again. So while you're coming down from this abstract geographic level, you start seeing the signs of the Russian presence on the level of a singular garden or a singular household. And what you're mostly seeing there is the signs of stealing, looting, and what's even more important, a phenomena of jealousy. So while Russian soldiers are keeping repeating themselves that this is about the brotherhood and so on, they keep unveiling it, that there is nothing of a brotherhood here. We are totally different people in terms of civilizational gap. So on the bottom right, you're seeing one of the signs they left on the wall, and it says bourgeois. So the garden on top is the picture is taken almost on the same spot. There is a super project. It's called the wall evidence. They're precisely taking pictures of the signs and words that Russians are leaving on the walls. So if Russian society thinks that they are voiceless and they're not given the voice on the international scene, well, they are saying for themselves. And it's always about jealousy, about us and them. It's about different societies.
Interesting.
And
yeah.
Sorry?
It's very interesting.
Well, this is what we see, and sometimes these intricate things, they're quite hard to explain and to translate, because
Yes.
in the first place you have to learn, you have to know the language to see it
Yeah.
all. As the opposite side of this phenomena, what you're seeing is an attempt to defend somehow, actually to defense and fence are coming together, to defend what was going on before the war. And I'm exploring the phenomena of a fence itself. So how high should it be to be effective? And does it really help? Does it help to defend from your neighbor or from the conqueror? And also, I'm exploring the phenomena of an attempt to save and preserve in the villages that are already destroyed. For example, Natasha Ishchenko on the upper picture is a lady who is posing for a portrait in front of her house. What is she doing here in Bohorodishne village? She's walking through the village and she's painting down the Z signs or the modern swastikas left by Russians. And she just wants to live in a cleaner village. So this is about an attempt to restore and preserve. So while we're talking about the local level and you're trying to defend something, what is this something that the garden gives you? And this is where you're coming to the concept of a food, which is very traumatizing for the Ukrainian society. I don't know if you follow the news and if you see the pictures of from the Ukrainian-Polish border, where the Ukrainian grain is being poured down as an attempt to protest the Ukrainian agriculture. I'm sure it's totally not obvious how traumatizing it is for the Ukrainian society to see the image of the waste. So Ukrainian society had gone through several attempts of existential elimination. The most famous is Holodomor, but in addition to that, you could go to the Ukrainian village and ask about it, and you'll hear more and more stories. For example, even after Holodomor, after the Second World War, there was the tax for the fruit trees, and Ukrainian society had to cut down the fruit trees in their gardens. The breadbasket of Europe, the breadbasket of the Soviet Union, the biggest country with the most fertile land, is being eliminated on the lowest existential level by being devoid of food. And this is what the Ukrainian society is trying to answer to that. In the destroyed village of Kamenka, people are putting pumpkins, the destroyed pumpkins for the pets, not the pets, but for the animals that you have in your household, like goats, and the complete ones for people. Because if you are here and there is not a single house intact, take something for you, because hunger is an existential threat. Or on top, you can see the first thing you do if you're coming back and you see your house destroyed and you sit tanking in your vegetable garden, you put plants in there, because who knows what would happen next. And we get used to the fact that tomorrow might be worse, and to stay on this low level, on this low existential level. And I've seen a lot of families who were saying that, well, with our wedge garden, at least we'll survive the winter. And it was not the bravado. It was a real threat, and they were relying on their crops, and just like centuries and centuries ago. So as we're moving like closer and closer to people who are living in these gardens, I was also trying to show the traditional emotional side of the garden, which is about decoration and emotion, and trying to live in a better place in terms of coziness and comfort. And now Ukrainian gardens and in general, this landscape turns a bit of a unusual twist. So in addition to classical paintings, for example, or the floral decoration, now people are trying to, and they're starting to reflect on war in their gardens. So for example, they're putting shells, where parts of shells that were striking their houses, they are putting it as a part of the decoration in in their gardens as a part of the landscape design, etc., etc. Or, for example, they are shooting and they're filming their ikebana. It's not ikebana, but it's very close to ikebana in their damaged houses. For example, this is Inna Petrenka, a floral artist, who's taking picture of her pieces of art in her house, which is being repaired at the same time on the first floor as we were filming her compositions on the second one. And as a result, I'm trying to analyze all of these factors as in the form of a post-colonial myth. So the image of a Ukrainian landscape as an inviting scenery that sort of is waiting for you, dear settler, to come here and to stay here, because again, this is a breadbasket of Europe, and everybody here is waiting for you and expecting for you to stay here, to feed you. This image has already been there in the past. For example, the postcards from late 19th century were used in the German Nazi propaganda during the World War II. Perfect pastoral imagery. Now again, it looks like this. So the landscape is here, but to get to there, you have to kind of wipe out the houses and the people who live there in the first place. And like it happened in Mariupol, you just eliminate the people because, well, why not? And then you can stay here and enjoy the countryside. So I kind of make the full circle. I try to look at the several prisms of the garden as a phenomena, and then to look at it on the more I don't know, holistic level. Oh, I'm sorry, I really run out of time. Please feel free to screenshot if you want to ask some questions later. As I said, because I had the only camera in the beginning of war, this is me 9 years ago, I started using Hasselblad Expand in the beginning. I also accompanied with my personal essays in the forms of text. Then I switched to digital cameras because, surprise, surprise, it's not really viable to shoot film in the war zone. You can buy it, you can process it. Don't repeat my mistakes. This is not a project where I follow the character. This is a project where I go in the fields and I explore, and then I analyze and I read a lot in my sort of library. From the manager point of view, this is a project I've been working on since early 2022. I think I would like to film something more like Famous Roses of Donbass, but I'm mostly done. I'm working on a book right now, and I'm very grateful. I think, yeah, let me wait for another minute to say something very important. I'm very grateful for support from Ukrainian Warchive, and also from IWM, Austrian organization. But once we're talking about the financing part of the personal project, please be very, very cautious of the resources and the organizations who are giving those resources for you. Because 10 years ago, I just keep reminding myself about this thing. There was a project called Another Crimea, where photographers from the famous agencies from the world, not Reuters, but more collective side, they shot a project which was attempting to show a different peaceful part of Crimea, different side of Crimea, but the money or resources or access was taken from the Russian government and Russian officials. And the most awful thing is that the pictures are nice, the pictures are awesome, and that's the most awful thing, because they work on the top tier propaganda level, and it's been used by the Russian society to show that, well, you know, Russia has stolen Crimea, and during the next years, all the local people, they will be put in jails, but you'll not be seeing that. Instead of that, you're seeing this nice imagery of peaceful people walking down the embankment. So please be very cautious of the resources, grants, first of all, but in general, resources you are taking from somebody to work on your project. I'll be happy to answer more questions.
Thanks, Sergei. Yeah.
I'm very sorry for being too long.
No, I mean, I'm really struck yeah, we're running close to our time now, but I'm really just struck by how thoughtful both of your projects are and the other projects in the book as well. I mean, you're giving us perspectives and dimensions that we don't see regularly, giving us insights that we don't see regularly. And I mean, when I contrast what you've shown us with kind of the day-to-day media coverage about the situation in Ukraine, politics in Washington that's preventing aid to Ukraine, all the limits about what's happening in Europe, the fact that aid, military aid, humanitarian aid is not getting there fast enough, or it just, to be honest, it kind of breaks your heart to hear that in contrast to the perspective that you're giving us about the thoughtfulness and the richness and of what you're living through, but also the perspective that you're creating of that. So it's been extremely powerful to give you that time to show us that work. And I think that final reminder, Sergei, I remember that other project on another Crimea. I remember the controversy around that. I think it's something well worth keeping in mind, and that's that's why the Warchive project is such an important source of support for these things to avoid those sorts of problems. For folks in the audience, if you've got a question, we've got a minute or two. You could drop one in quickly. Emine, let me ask you as we wrap up: will you be doing another round of microgrants? Will you be supporting some more projects? What's the time scale for that? I can't hear you.
This year, we do have 15 grants, which will be definitely distributing, but we did change because, like, for 2 first calls, we did open call. The third wave we did through the, we reached out to the people who work as editors or like within the community to recommend people, and we had this list, and then like had to choose, and we had to choose like 8. And then at this time, we also will be going not through the open call for these 15, but if we sell enough books, we will be doing open calls as well, as probably as we will be selling books. So please follow on Instagram. Instagram is our main channel of communication.
Yeah. So we've shared the links for the books. We've shared the Instagram channel. I'm sure people in the audience will be doing their best to promote these things. Someone already is, which is great. Dominic's doing that. So yes, we will get the word out as far as possible because everyone should have a chance to see the book and the stories and so on. So my final question for you, Emine, is, interestingly, there are no captions in the book. What led to that decision?
We decided pretty much to go with a personal text from photographers.
Right.
And the main thing we were trying to do with all the book and all the stories is to put like kind of kaleidoscopic like view into the war experience of since invasion. So that's why there are 13 stories and different formats. But then another thing we really wanted to do is to have to go beyond like media coverage and go beyond just publication of one photograph for each photographer. That's why we chose essays, like 8 to like 12 images for each photographer. And then when we had them, we were like, we want to have, because first we thought about captions. Like, are we going to put like just a name of the project and then captions and like description of the project? But then we thought, how could we communicate with the book, this very deep personal connection each photographer has to these projects and to the moment they captured? Because it's not just about the people or places they photographed, it's as much about themselves being, living, working in Ukraine, and also being at the same time kind of targets of this military aggression as well. And that's why we did go with this kind of photo essay, which reads as a visual sequence with a quite personal text. And they also, you can tell that they come from like, they're written by the photographers themselves, and they vary in the length and format. It's also, but at the same time, they do give like this kind of feeling of rawness and immediacy. And at the same time, it kind of like does give you a personal perspective and describe either what photographers were thinking or what's going on in their life or how they approach the project, which I think as much telling as the captions.
And the final question to you, Emine, is from Dominic. They're wondering if the archive is actually going to license images for sale at some point. Do you have that plan?
No.
No. So the archive is just to record and be an historical document.
Yes. So I feel it's unfair to ask photographers for the right to license to the third parties the photographs unless they're willing to do themselves. And because we don't pay for like we don't pay photographers to put it in our collections, right? Yeah. So if someone comes to us and say, oh, we want to publish some work and stuff, we just direct them directly to photographers. And we do have contacts with all the photographers. So if someone wants to license something,
they can go straight to the photographer.
We can put you in touch with photographers if you're struggling to find their contact on their websites.
That's great. Well, that brings us to the end of our time. I want to really thank you, Emine, for the work that you're doing on the archive, which I think is really important. The exhibitions and the book, extremely important, and sharing that with us. And in particular, Yulia and Sergei, thank you so much for being with us today to present that work and share those stories. Extremely powerful, extremely moving.
Thank you for having us.
We shall look forward to seeing the next projects that you're going to produce.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Have a calm evening.
Thank you. Bye.